Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video, we'll just quickly look at Azure Managed Identity. So what are managed identities for Azure resources? Right. So one of the common challenge for developers is the management of secrets, credentials, certificate, keys, etc. used to secure communication between these services, right? So managed identities helps to eliminate the need for developers to manage these credentials. And you might have a question, while developers can securely store those secrets in Key Vault, but the services need a way to access that Key Vault itself. So these managed identities are automatically managed in Azure Active Directory for the applications to use when connecting to resources that actually support AD authentication in Azure. So applications can use managed identities to obtain Azure AD tokens, so without having to manage any credentials. So that's the benefit. So when it comes to the types of managed identities, we have system assigned and user assigned. So in this video, we'll be looking at system assigned managed identity. So that is tied to the lifecycle of the resource itself. So what do I mean by that? So when the resource is deleted, so the managed identity also deleted in the Azure Active Directory, right? So let's move on. What are the benefits of using managed identities for Azure resources? So you don't need to manage the credentials. So credentials aren't even accessible to you itself. So you can use managed identities to authenticate to any resource that supports Azure AD authentication, as I already mentioned, so including your own applications. So managed identities can be used without any additional cost itself. So when it comes to costing aspect, so what we will do is I'm just going to show you a simple example wherein we'll have a virtual machine created in Azure with system assigned managed identity activated, and we will have a storage account in place with a sample txt file, and we will provide an RBAC role, storage blob data reader role, for the VM itself to the storage account to access the data. And what we will do is we'll execute a simple .NET program inside the virtual machine that will actually get the access token from Azure AD to gain access to the storage account to download the blob txt file into the virtual machine. So here I'm in my Azure portal. So let me show you, we have a storage account, demo store ACC123. So if I move on to containers, so I have a sample container in place, and I have a hello.txt file, which is a simple text file. I'll show you the contents inside the file. Click on edit. It's just a hello world txt blob file that we have in the sample container. So let me move back to portal home, and here I have a test virtual machine already created, and it's running. And the left blade, you can scroll down and you can find identity in the left blade, right? So here you can see there are a couple of tabs that you can see. One is system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity. So under system assigned managed identity, here you can see I have toggled the status to on, and I have created a managed identity for this virtual machine, test virtual machine, and we have the object principal ID, and you can also see the role assignments for this managed identity for the virtual machine itself here. Okay, so if I click on Azure role assignments, you can see what are all the role assignments that this VM have once we activate the managed identity, right? So here you can see that we have a storage blob data reader role. Okay, so we can jump over to the storage account real quickly. Under access control, if you move on to role assignments, here you can see the test VM have storage blob data reader role to this storage account. Okay, so that's the first step. So you need to have a storage account to simulate this scenario and have a sample txt file and have your virtual machine created, and we need to enable the system assigned managed identity in virtual machine, and you need to provide the role assignment, appropriate role assignment to the storage account, so that the test VM will be able to access the data in this storage account. Okay, let me close this. And also, if I can move on to test VM under identity, you can also copy this object ID or the service principal ID, and you can come back to Azure Active Directory. Here under enterprise applications, you can search with that object ID, and you should be able to see the service principal created in Active Directory with the application ID and other information. You can have a look. Okay, so let me close this real quickly and let me move on to test VM. So I have already opened the test virtual machine. Okay, so with the public IP address 20.228.184.113, let me open the test virtual machine. So here I have a simple .NET program, okay, in Visual Studio Code. So I'll make sure to zip this code for you so that you can practice yourself. So let me quickly run through this program, what it is actually doing. So here I have a blob URL, so wherein I have this storage account URL, the exact blob URL, as I've already shown. We have a sample container and we have a hello.txt file inside the sample container. So you need to provide the entire path. So for that, you can go to your storage account. You can go to containers, sample container, click on hello.txt. You can copy the URL. Okay, so that's the exact same URL that I copied it to the blob URL variable here, right? And also we are specifying the download path, so where I need to store the hello.txt file in this virtual machine. So I have given it as C drive temp hello.txt. So the folder is currently empty, as you can see here. Okay, so we are going to run this program executable, and we'll see if we are able to successfully get the access token and gain access to the storage account to download the blob hello.txt blob into this virtual machine, right? So here I have the token credential class, so that will actually provide an auth token. So this will get the default credential, the access token itself. Okay, so to gain access to the storage account from Azure Active Directory. And in the blob URI, we are creating a new instance and passing the URL itself, and I have a blob client class that will actually take in the blob URL, right, and also the credential, which is the default Azure credential. And we are trying to, in line number 26, we are trying to download the blob, okay, with the download method. And here from line 28 till 32, we are just going to, all we are doing is we are writing it to the file in the download path in the C drive temp folder, right? It's a very simple program. So let's move on to, so before this, one more thing. So you need to make sure to install the .NET SDK. Okay, so here if you can see the program project file, the target framework is .NET 6.0 framework. So please make sure you are installing the .NET SDK appropriate version in this VM. So I can provide the link in the description as well, so you can download the .NET SDK, and you have to download the runtime for the Windows x64. Okay, and then you can go ahead and install the SDK. So if I move on to the project folder under bin debug, you can see the executable is already there. I have already built the application and the sample exe is ready for me to execute. So let's run this executable and see if you're able to gain access to the storage account from this virtual machine. So if I jump over to the slide deck, so to give you a quick background again, so what we're trying to do, we are just trying to run a .NET executable simple program that will get the access token from Azure AD to gain access to the storage account. So let me jump over to the virtual machine and let me move on to the bin folder, bin debug folder, where we already built the application. So let me try to execute this sample.exe that will run through this program and try to download the hello.txt blob onto C drive temp in the virtual machine. So let's try that and see what happens. So before that, just to make sure I don't have a blob in my C drive temp folder, so that I can make sure the program is running fine to download the blob contents onto this directory. Let me run this. Okay, it says the file download is complete. So let me close this and come back to the C drive temp folder. Here it is. I can see the hello.txt blob file from the storage account successfully got downloaded to the C drive temp folder in this virtual machine. So to just make sure we have the correct content available, yes it is. Okay, so I'll provide the GitHub link where I packed this sample program that I built in this virtual machine, so that you can practice yourself by provisioning the resources in your subscription, and you can try this and see it in action, the system assigned managed identity. So in another video, I'll probably talk more about the differences between the system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity. Okay. So in this video, we looked at system assigned managed identity for Azure resources. So this is to secure the connection between the services. And the example what we took is a virtual machine that is assigned with the system assigned managed identity. So an identity got created in Azure AD for the virtual machine with the same name, and we have a storage account, and all we tried is we had a simple .NET program that gets the access token to gain access to the storage account to download the blob itself. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it's helpful. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel so that you may be notified on any future videos that I may post. Please share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.